Welcome and thank you for clicking on my video. This week can be very terrifying because of what I put in my thumbnail, this right here, and this would be the 10-year yield, and we are going to talk about that towards the end of this video, so make sure to watch this video all the way through. But don't worry, today we do have those updated weekly and daily ranges going into tomorrow for the SPY and the Q, so we got to do some technical analysis for the SPY, Qs, Apple, Tesla, Amazon, Nvidia, AMD, and that's because we need to do that analysis just because this week is going to be very, very crazy. We have some good news that could come out early on in the week with Nvidia, but is that going to be ripped away from the Fed? Let's get into it. But before we talk about those yields that are very, very important going into Wednesday, we have to talk about the couple of days that come before that. And so we need those daily expected moves. The daily expected moves for Monday are going to be 513.63 for the SPY to the upside and 506.03 for the SPY to the downside. And then those weekly expected moves for the entire week. This is all the market has, all the options market has priced in for the entire week. That would be 519.87 to the upside and 499.79 to the downside. So one thing I wanted you to notice about the SPY here, a big range finally for the SPY, right? We haven't seen that big of a range. We've really gotten 5 points up, 5 points down. Now you are getting double that as of this week. So this week could be a very trap-like week. We could see some big volatility moving forward. So right after the 10-year yield towards the end of this video, we're going to talk a little bit about volatility, but let's see what could really happen from here looking at these ranges. Well, we can see that if we're talking about the entire week, we actually could see this curl back up and we could come touch the monthly expected move, or we could see this as some kind of flagging and start to head down. So we really want to pay attention early on Monday which way this is going. If we get excited out of the daily, or if we get excited out of the daily, if we come all the way down to the weekly for a couple of days before that Fed rate decision, that could then maybe he comes out and saves the market. Maybe he even says, hey, we are going to cut rates, and people are excited about that, but we know the reason that they're cutting rates is because something is breaking in the system because of what the yields are doing. So we're going to have to keep all of that in mind moving forward. But the good part here, all of these 2-hour divergences to the bear side, all of these 2-hour divergences that line up on the RSI and MACD down here, we're able to get into negative territory. That's really the first step that we really want to happen. Now we want that to get deeper. Okay, we want that to get deeper because if it stays right at this center line and we see some positivity, possibly with that GTC and Nvidia, and maybe we see that pop in AMD continue, we could be seeing this actually turn back around and make another point of divergence before this actually wants to fall. So we really want to pay attention early on in the week, and that's why maybe we need to go into a shorter time frame. Let's look at a 30-minute here, and one thing you're noticing is we're starting to cross up on this MACD down here. Okay, we're starting to cross up, but this is a great sign for that negative trend to really continue. If this continues to go deeper and deeper into negative territory, you get further from that center line, which is a less probability of us going into a positive trend coming up, breaking this high. But if we're able to see some extreme buying back up, maybe Friday was just some selling with quad witching, and this is actually going to buy back up. So we want to see if this 30-minute is able to roll back up into positive territory, possibly with some good news from Nvidia. I just want to check a 15-minute. One thing that could happen as of Monday, we have those daily expected moves, so this is where we can pay attention to the 15-minute, and make sure to join us for that live video. We are live all throughout the week, every single morning at market open, so join us for that live video. Come by, say hi, ask questions. We talk about a lot of things and look at a lot of charts. Now, the one thing I would say is we could come all the way down to here come Monday, and maybe this is where we see some kind of reaction. That would give us some kind of 15-minute divergence. So we are going to be paying attention to this on Monday during that live video. So do come by, turn on those notifications, make sure you're subscribed so you know when we're actually going live. But just so you guys do know, it's at market open every single day. Now let's go into the Qs and see if we see anything a little bit different. Let's kind of look at this in the same way. Let's start off with a 2-hour and see. Well, the Qs were able to get even deeper into negative territory, dip down one time. Okay, so this is what we talk about with these divergences. These divergences here, we get very close to this double top up here, right? We get very, very close to negative territory, roll over it, we roll up one more time, create some kind of lower high, and then we see that dip down. Right now, you do have a low and a lower low, so we could be in that negative trend as of right now, so we have to treat these little pops with some caution. If we actually head upward, and this goes for the SPY as well, if we head upward towards the daily expected move and see that come in as some resistance, we could just be rolling up and rolling back down in negative territory, continuing that negative trend. So we're going to pay attention to that. And just so you have those exact levels for the daily side, as of Monday, 438 38 to the upside, and then we have 429.46 to the downside. So the interesting thing here is the SPY has a good range, the Qs have a good range, so we can expect some volatility, and that's where we have to pay attention to the weekly. So the weekly upside here, 445.59 to the upside, and we have 422.25 to the downside. The very interesting thing about this lower side here is it's right next to that monthly expected move. So if we do get some kind of pop and then drop to lower levels, we could get a reaction in this little area here, because when we come outside of these purple lines, we have that 68% chance to land back in this zone. When we do that to the downside, we have that 68% chance to land in this zone. And when you have the monthly and the weekly right next to each other, then when you get outside of here, the probability of some kind of bounce is pretty high. So if we are going to experience some kind of crash this week, most likely you will be taking out those levels. If you take out those levels, you can start to dramatically head down with something a little crazier, but you still do have a 68% chance to head up, which makes a lot of sense actually. If we head down to lower levels and then we get a reaction around this area right outside of that weekly expected move, we could create that big head and shoulders, right? We have the left, we have a head, and maybe we create some kind of right shoulder, and then we start to break down. So we have to really still be trading like water out there, make sure that we're moving back and forth, because we could see some traps. We do have the possibility of some good news coming out with Nvidia, so make sure you get those weekly expected moves down in the description on my Patreon. Now, Apple, we were talking about how you're still stuck in this range. We really haven't been able to firmly close below it. We tried to close below it for a couple bars on this 2 hour, but we really weren't able to. So you do have a possibility of this curling back down in what? Negative territory on a 2 hour, which just means, hey, we could go a little bit lower. So this is where it pays to have those weekly expected moves, because if we make a sudden move lower and then we head to those weekly expected moves and we see that start to bounce a little bit, we could create some kind of divergence down here, which could lead to a stronger bounce in the future. So this is where it pays to be a little bit patient for the upside. But if we wanted to get bullish here, right, we want to look at a 30-minute and just say, this is right at that center line. So it could go either way. We're seeing some strength. The thing about this is we built up liquidity in here so long that we could see a big reaction early on in the week. So this is something that I am going to pay attention to. I'm probably going to post something about Apple on Patreon this week. Probably do one of those videos for you guys on Patreon, because baby girl's been a little crazy. So I was a little slacking last week on the videos for Patreon, but I tried to post a bunch of trading ideas. One of them with AMD actually worked out. We're going to talk about that in a moment. So really look for this to get into positive territory. I think that is your signal that we're possibly going to see that big move up. And that's where we can pay attention to the top side of that range. But I thought it was very important to show you guys how the 2 hour looks like it really wants to roll over, but we just keep rejecting as we consolidate sideways here. So really still want to see a firm break to the upside past 174, and then another break to the downside, really just a break past 170.50. I think that will really give you an inclination of where this is going. But if you really like the MACD down here, you guys know I do. If this curls over, very, very good shot that we are going to test this low or go make a new one. And that's where I'll use my weekly expected moves. Tesla, we've been paying attention to a couple levels, and we said, yeah, no, we were able to break through this level. We retested it a bunch of times. And if you can't break through that resistance, this support becoming resistance at this point, you can't break through it. You notice we tested a bunch of times. What do? You break back down. So down here on the MACD, you actually see this. This isn't necessarily divergence. We don't really have a 2 hour divergence anymore. These are getting pretty violated. All you have is one flat one on the MACD, which tells me if there is some kind of pop here, it could be a sudden drop. Now, I can tell you that the range for Tesla for the week is very big. So if you are trading Tesla this week, go down in the description, look at Patreon, because you can get those weekly ranges. And this week will be very, very interesting with, first of all, we could see positivity going into a bunch of AI chip stocks. And then at the same time, we could see that negativity come in with the Fed, depending on what they say or what they do with the Fed interest rate and what they say in the press conference. And that's where we have to talk about those yields. But I just want to show you the 2 hour, this divergence not really holding true at this point. Now, the daily side, we still have that divergence. So Tesla does have the opportunity for a prolonged upward move here. It does have that opportunity from the momentum perspective if we can get some good news, get this up into positive territory. But as you don't necessarily have a solid 2 hour divergence, you could get some kind of pop on the 2 hour, get that to drop one more time, and then get that divergence in the future, maybe around earnings. So really pay attention to this. The levels that we've been paying attention to, that 180.92 has really been good to us. And I think we might actually head down to 154.78 before we see that bigger reaction from Tesla. Amazon on the 2 hour starting to give us a 2 hour double top up here. Okay, we see this divergence right here. This wasn't divergence, this was a like consolidation, right? So we got this lower high. Now we have an actual possible double top. So we see that divergence come in. Hasn't gotten into negative territory yet. You guys know this is the trade that I took last week and it did fall off. I already took profit on it just because I think that we could be seeing some more traps, because if I go into a 30-minute, I can see this thing looks like it wants to curl up. The last time it curled up even lower, it went higher, and we were talking about a head and shoulders forming here for Amazon. So even though Amazon breaking down a little bit at the very end of the day, kind of flagging breaking down, I am open to it breaking down. I'm not necessarily in any trade with Amazon anymore, but I want to pay attention to any kind of upside because we have a left. We said Amazon, if it wanted to go higher, it most likely comes up into this area, right? Comes up into this area, scoops down, grabs that liquidity, and you got a nice head and shoulders here to actually head higher. So this is when I'm really going to pay attention to the upside of the weekly expected move over on my Patreon, because this could be a very, very good trade in the near future. And this is one that we might actually have to post on Patreon for you guys. So pay attention to those. But as of right now, you're in negative territory. So if you do drop down, like if this curls up towards that center line and then curls back down, you most likely will be making a new low on Amazon. So if Amazon really wants to see an upward move, I would say it needs to do that on Monday. I think it really needs to carve out this right shoulder on Monday and then see that positivity come in. Now we have to pay attention to the signals we see before the Fed. So make sure you're subscribed so you can get all the info every single night and tune in live for that Fed rate decision. Now, if we're going to see a pop in Amazon on Monday, what could happen here? We could see this 15-minute rollover. We've already seen it start to curl down. It's losing the moving averages. Good shot now. We actually test this low. So if this wants to curl down, look for that to be brief. If that's pretty brief, then this could carve out that right shoulder. We could see a little 15-minute divergence here and see a pop in Amazon. So we want to pay attention to the shorter time frames throughout this week because we could be getting some traps to the downside. Then I believe we may get a big trap to the upside. So very important to follow the price action here, move around those rocks in the middle of our stream, just figure out which way the price of these things is going, and then go with that stream, right? We're trading like water out there. Now, Nvidia, very interesting here on the 2 hour. We're starting to head towards negative territory. And the good part about this is if we're actually going to see an upward move, right? We talked about this. We talked about the possible flagging here, still within that flag at this point, in my opinion. So we could see this curl up. If we see this curl up, it's in positive territory. What does that mean? Well, we can test this high. We can come test this high. We could go make a new one. And I can tell you that the weekly expected move for Nvidia is a bit big this week. So we do have potential to get to $1,000 with this weekly expected move. But if we get outside of that weekly expected move pretty early, then we could see that ripped away possibly by Wednesday. So maybe when everyone gets euphoric and this thing can't come down, the Fed actually flips that around. So we have to pay attention to what the Fed actually says. We said our trading idea here was this is actually maybe a left shoulder. Maybe we go make the head here and then we get some kind of right shoulder to then break through this base right here. So the 2 hour really just have to pay attention. Is this going to roll up in positive territory? That means there can be more positivity with Nvidia going on into next week. The 30-minute, something I'm paying attention to in the short time frames, the 30-minute, if I can get some kind of double bottom here. We saw that selling come in at the end of the day, right? So we could see some kind of double bottom and then that comes up. But if this wants to roll completely over and test this level again, then it starts to say, hey, maybe this is your left, this is the head, and this is the right shoulder. We're not going to get to 1,000. So it's just a time to pay attention to a lot of these signals. You're about to curl over into negative territory, which means we can test this low. We can go make a new one. But this area here is where we're really going to want to pay attention going on into this week if we see some negativity, because you could get a reaction down and a quick reaction up because of that GTC. AMD, a little bit different story. We saw that top out and it's just gradually come down over time. But what did we tell you on Friday? If they were going to manipulate this market, we saw a ton of stocks head down. Amazon down 2.42%, Meta down 1.5%, Microsoft down 2%. We have Google down 1.5%. But the market was really only down like, the SPY was only down 1% and the Q's down 1.2%. So we were saying live, if they want to manipulate the stock market and keep it from heading to lower levels, getting those algorithms to kick in and continue that selling, well, they're going to use AMD and most likely Nvidia to do it. Nvidia ended pretty flat on the day, right? Coming down, coming up, and then ending kind of where it started out the day. But AMD actually ending the day up 2.14%. And this is that trade that we were really telling you guys about. We were looking for these divergences to get some kind of pop because it was outside of that daily or that weekly expected move. So we had to pay attention to it. Now it did dip lower. So this actually, dipped to lower prices. It actually took out these divergences and then saw that pop. So that's something to pay attention to. Down here on the MACD, you really just were flat on the MACD at this point. But if you were confident in the trade, you can take it to the upside. This one was a scary one. I can tell you I was in it. I was in this trade, right? Right around this area, I was in this trade, and then it started to keep going. I got out of the trade because I go, this can really start to escalate if it just keeps going. Now, it did get that reaction. I could have made a pretty little penny, but that's okay. I'm looking for, if this 30-minute rolls down on Monday, maybe I can see some kind of divergence that leads to a more solid pop in AMD. So I want to pay attention to that. But I'm still looking at this 2-hour on Monday as well. If we see some kind of bigger move, maybe we actually want to set up some kind of divergence or some kind of lower high at this point because we're pretty deep. Once you start to get deep, right, into negative territory, you kind of the probabilities of actually making that new high and getting that divergence is a little bit lower. So we want to pay attention to that. But I really think this has a good chance to pop up a little bit, maybe test these levels again around that, 210 level. And then we see that start to fade. So look for some kind of lower high created in AMD. How you can see that if this rolls up throughout the week, and then by end of the week, it actually curls back down, we could be seeing that negative trend really solidified in lower prices in AMD. So it's a time to be a little bit cautious just because on AMD, the daily does not look the best. The only good part about the daily, though, is you're right at that 20, okay? So until this 5 crosses, right, this red line, this 5-day moving average crosses this 20, I'm not going to really say that it's going to head lower. But if we start to cross, then you could use that Bollinger Band thing, right? I think it's like 90% of the time when the SPY crosses, the 5 crosses the 20 on the SPY, it tests the bottom Bollinger. I'm still retesting to see if that's true for individual stocks. But we can notice that if it would cross, we would just say that is a very bad sign at this point. Now we are into the 10-year yield, and this is really what we need to talk about, okay? The reason that this is so bad. Okay, right now, this is the bond market kind of saying, hey, we're forcing the Fed to make some kind of move because this is going up so fast. The Fed already admitted that the rates being where they are, it will cause some banks to fail. They said that Jerome Powell said it with his own mouth. He said that some banks will fail. And what do we see shortly after he says that the next week? Boom, we see that crossing up on the MACD. We see the possibility of this thing breaking through 4.362. I can tell you right now, the Fed does not want this to break through, but they are stuck between a rock and a hard place. If they do not react and cut the rates, well, if they cut rates too soon, then you can have hyperinflation come back. But if they do not cut rates and this continues to hold higher or go even higher than where it's at right now, then you get a lot of banks in trouble and you have the potential for a banking crisis. So it's like this. If I cut rates, hyperinflation can come back. If I don't cut rates, banks can have a banking crisis and all start to fail. So they are stuck in a hard spot, and most likely, actually, I'm going to not say most likely. I think either way this plays out, the market is going to really, really suffer either way. Hyperinflation might make the stock market explode for a little bit, but a banking crisis will make it crash for like right away. Pretty much what you need to know here, this curling up is very bad sign. So we want to pay attention to TLT, see if that is able to create anything for us. Now we might not see that divergence down here on the RSI, but we will get one on the MACD most likely. If this heads to lower levels, we give you the range for TLT as well, so you can know if it's below that, because that's what the options market expects for TLT. So sometimes it's useful when looking at those rates. We could see a move down and then a rapid move up if the Fed decides to mention any kind of cutting going forward. They could give a cutting projection when they are actually going to start cutting. They could do that. Now, they haven't done that so far. They've been just saying we are most likely going to cut some by the end of the year. They stopped saying 3 rate cuts. So we have to pay attention to Wednesday, and we're going to be live talking about this, but there is potential for TLT to create at least a divergence on the MACD down here that can get us back into positive territory, and we could see TLT actually explode higher, which will bring those rates down. Is that people running to safety, or is that going to cause some hyperinflation to come back into this market? It is a recipe for disaster, and that's why this week is terrifying and very important. And not to give multiple reasons why this week can be terrifying and just horrible, is because we're actually still in that positive trend for volatility. So volatility, you notice, is remaining a little bit higher. That doesn't mean it can't dip down with some kind of very big bullish move, but as of right now, still in a positive trend on the daily scale, in positive territory. If this thing just can get a strong move up for a couple of days, close above the 200, and then have that 50 cross the 200, we're most likely in that crash scenario. So I'll take a peek at like a 30-minute just to see what could go on. And really, this is what we were looking for live. I was stating how we could get some retests to get some kind of divergence up here. And I wanted to see that. And I was watching this after I went live. And I noticed that, hey, we have this flatness of the MACD at the top, and we have a solid divergence on the RSI. So we actually could see positivity come in, because a lot of the time these 30 minutes, even on the VIX, like to roll over this 2 hour. Where would the 2 hour go? It would go into negative territory. Okay, so this could go down into negative territory. We could be seeing some positivity early on into this week, and we want to see where stocks are at before Wednesday, because if they're making moves outside of their weekly expected move, right, and it's early on in the week, we have that 68% chance to land back down, and that's why we really want to pay attention to this week. Looks like volatility actually could roll back over, and we could see a positive move for a couple days here, but because of how things look, we have to be very cautious. It could be something like only a few select stocks start to actually head upward, while some of them continue to suffer. One of them that I would look out for, though, is Tesla. It's been beat down for so long, and it has some divergences behind it. It has some momentum slightly dying out, and we could see that one turn around. And then Nvidia and all those types that could get some good news from GTC could see a move higher. Overall takeaway here is this market can be really, really scary this week, and we actually could get another trap. We could be getting more traps. We told you at the beginning of the month of March, we were expecting March to just be trap city. We were expecting it to be just trap after trap, and guess what we got? We got trap after trap. So if we continue to trade like water, we can do really good in a market like this. Volatility a little higher. If we can catch these moves, we can do very well. This is really when the skilled traders come out, and that's why if you do want to learn more about this stuff, go check out my course down in the description. But I really just wanted to say thank you guys so much for watching my video. I really do appreciate it. Thank you for liking, subscribing. You guys are always fantastic, and you guys even show up to the live video and make it a ton of fun for me every day. So I look forward to going live tomorrow for Market Open. I hope you guys have a fantastic week. I hope you had a great weekend, but I hope you have all the luck in the world trading this week. Trade like water out there, and have a good night. Peace.